Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for this webinar on upgrading your accounting and ERP technology with Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. My name is John Smith. I'm the Director of Enterprise Business Solutions here at CR Group. In terms of agenda for today, what we're going to do is talk about, the key factors that tell an organization they've outgrown their accounting software, why so many organizations are choosing cloud. And when they're making a migration from an accounting system, why the cloud-based systems are the ones getting all the attention, and certainly this one, Microsoft's Business Central. We'll talk about its capabilities. We're going to show you some of the product. And if we get time, we'll talk about getting started with migration and, of course, deal with questions. So just a little bit about us before we get started. CR Group, we've been around for 30 years. For most of that time, we have been a Microsoft Dynamics partner and have many years of experience with Microsoft. Our team is headquartered out of Ottawa, Canada, but we do have offices in the US and other places around the world. We originally built the Dynamics GP CRG Changer product. So this is used to change chart of accounts. You might know Reformatter, which is also used with the chart of accounts, Quick Cubes, and some of our other very successful products that were built on Dynamics GP. Today, we're experts in the new wave of Dynamics ERP software, which is Dynamics 365. We also, as an organization, deliver a whole host of business applications, not just the box on the left, which is ERP, but we also have our own unique solutions, some of the add-ons I just discussed that we've built, as well as our own products. We also, of course, do things like collaboration through SharePoint, Teams, and Office 365, a big practice around business intelligence, reporting, and analytics. We have our own very successful talent management software called Mperform, and a big practice around corporate performance management and budgeting, and finally do some work in the value-based management space. So let's talk about why organizations outgrow their accounting software. And I think we probably all know that these are some key reasons: siloed systems, bad data, manual processes, insufficient reporting, security issues. We see lots of clients out there with QuickBooks that hit a certain size and scale of operation, and it just doesn't work for them anymore. Sometimes it's growth and just adding, going from a 1-user system to a 10-user system, and obviously the requirements around the setup and configuration that are associated with a business that needs 5 or 10 people in finance is different than someone in one. There's lots of reasons. We see a lot of people now looking at these systems because the organization has mandated a cloud migration strategy. And as part of their cloud migration strategy, they want to move to a cloud-based business accounting software. So lots of reasons to consider it. But why would you consider cloud? Well, there's 3 great benefits to the cloud, and certainly this is true of Microsoft Business Central. First is staying on the current technology. In fact, in the case of Dynamics 365 Business Central, there's a spring update and a fall update every year, and those are automatically deployed on your site. You just pick the window and it updates for you. So you're continually on the latest and greatest technology. We find that the pricing, and we'll talk about that later in the demonstration, you'll see it, but the licensing cost and what Microsoft's delivering through the cloud capability here really helps reduce costs and free up resources. And last, but maybe equally important, this comes with Microsoft's world-class security, privacy, and reliability. The backbone of this system is the Microsoft Cloud, and you're getting all of those benefits with it. So as we shift to thinking about Business Central, we talk about 3 big themes with Business Central. One is connecting the business, the second is making smarter decisions, and the third is really starting and growing easily. So let's just talk a little bit about how we do this in Business Central. First and foremost, when we think about a connected business, we think about the core capability set. And what you see in the chart in front of you is that Dynamics 365 Business Central covers really all of the core areas one would expect in a modern ERP. From straight ahead financial management with GL, receivables, payables, bank rec, etc., through sales, where we have things like quotes and contacts and sales invoicing and sales orders, through a great project accounting module, full and deep supply chain, including warehouse management, manufacturing capability, and some great reporting and analytics. And of course, one of the big things you'll see with Microsoft is that Business Central has a really nice tie-in to Power BI and uses some great technology to deliver really actionable reports within the system. When we think about a single comprehensive solution, we think about one that connects all of the dots. So all of the things we talked about are interconnected. You know, there's less of sort of an old traditional module-based approach and more of an integrated system here. One of the great things about Business Central is it has immense connectivity capability. You'll see later in the presentation, I'll highlight one of the things I like the most about it is that out of the box, it connects to Microsoft's great CRM tool, but there's a whole host of other web apps that Business Central can easily and seamlessly connect with. When we think about connecting the business, let's think about, you know, taking the product with us. This is a modern ERP, and as you'd expect, it works on any browser. It works on a Mac, which I use, it works on a PC. It comes with a full-featured mobile app, and the only experience to get there that your users will require is a web browser. And of course, all of the modern web browsers work with Business Central. More specifically, the things we do in it, right? Well, we manage quote and cash, right? We manage, you know, that cycle of order to cash, if you want to call it that, all through Business Central. Invoicing can be done there. But one of the big things about Business Central is that there's an add-in for Outlook. And not only does the add-in for Outlook give you some key information about, you know, who the customer or vendor is that's sending you an email, it also allows you from within Outlook to generate things like purchase orders, sales invoices, etc. So a really great tie-in to Outlook. And as I always tell people, Microsoft is going to integrate with Microsoft better than anyone else. So you can expect here a really world-class experience if you're using Office 365, and I'm going to show you how that works here momentarily. We also talk about automating and securing the business processes. And I think one of the big themes, one of the things that's changed a lot versus the legacy accounting systems is the capability for workflow. And workflow is throughout this system. Workflow to get things approved, whether it's a new vendor, whether it's an invoice going out, you know, whether it's a payment being made. Those can be driven by workflow. And there's lots of audit trails to ensure appropriate security. These are things we would expect in a modern ERP, and they're here. The system also helps us make smarter decisions, right? So from visibility of getting an end-to-end view of your business, all the way through finance, sales, and service, the system really delivers key insights, metrics, dashboards that you really get real-time visibility on what's happening within your business. And again, in this demonstration, we'll show you some of that. We can really help employees understand what's happening. There is integrated Power BI. There are fact panes you're going to see everywhere, right? If you get an email from a customer, it's going to tell you what their balance is. If you go to the customer record on the right-hand side of the screen, it's going to say, here's their balance, here's their order patterns over the last year. We can really configure Business Central as well to suit your organization. There is lots of ability in here to personalize and configure the solution around your unique business. And even from things like renaming groups or moving elements around the screen to, you know, showing certain fields and hiding certain others, this all lends to a very tailored experience, both for the role of the person who's using the system, as well as you, the organization or client that's deploying it. There are other things that I think are really important as well. As we move into this modern world, Microsoft's App Source, and that's something you could go check out, has a whole library of extensions that have been built on to integrate with Business Central and extend the capability. This is like an app store for your phone. We now have an app store for ERP. And there is all kinds of things here, from extensions that relate to credit card capability to, you know, industry specific needs. In fact, we've already built our first extension, which helps do some project budget freezes and things like that in the jobs module. Also, you know, the system is really ready to grow. And I talked about this at the beginning, that one of the main reasons people look at upgrading their system is to put more users on it. So this is something that's really, really something important for us to think about. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do now is really move over to the software and log in and show you around a bit. And then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about things like my pricing and migration. But let's take a quick look at what's actually happening in Business Central. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, and I've logged into the home page of Business Central. And as you can see here, in this home page, I've immediately got some key pieces of information. No sales this month, that's not great. Well, that is because we're in a demonstration system. I can see our overdue invoices that we need to pay. I can see overdue purchase invoices that need to be paid. I can see tiles of information about transactions. I can see statuses that I've got some approvals that I have approved. I've got timesheets that are due and open. I've got a listing of favorite accounts, and we can build in things like trial balances and performance charts. But one of the things that's really important to point out about all of these things is that if you click on them, they will drill down to the data. So for instance, on overdue sales invoices, it takes me to this list view. And I like to point this out because some of the users who come off of some of the legacy Dynamics products know things like smart lists, and you're going to see that throughout Business Central. These list views are great because you click in them, they show you a summary. In this case, I'm looking at outstanding invoices. And right from here, I can simply click on a line and it'll open up the invoice that's outstanding. Over on the right side of the invoice, I'd be able to see any file attachments or notes that have been made. And this is something that happens throughout the system. On a customer record, on an invoice, we've got this fact panel over here on the right-hand side, and you can add attachments right in here. You can make notes so that they're there for history purposes. You click that icon and it turns it off, and I can see that the specific invoice to Trey research is for software, $12,000 worth, $1,000 a month. So right from this view, I have a lot of information at my disposal. And one of the things we love about the list views is you click on the page and you can send it directly to Excel, because as I mentioned, Microsoft integrates better than anybody with Microsoft. Now, let me just show you something that is also unique in Business Central. I'm going to just drag down an email into my screen for you to take a look at. Now, I got an email from, it happened to be from John Smith, but what I've got on here actually is, hey, John, we're interested in a quote. Immediately over on the right-hand side, you can see that I've got some contact insights. And what this means is that if you're using Office 365 and Business Central, there is an add-in for Outlook that exposes Business Central data. So I can see this customer balance. I can actually click on that, and it'll show me the invoices that are for that customer. I can put them in a bigger window if I want, just by extending this and really drilling in to see what they are. And even from here in Outlook, I don't have to be in Business Central. In Outlook, I can drill down and actually see the invoice. So this interoperability with Outlook is really something that's great. And I think one of the things that's also great is that from here and your Business Central add-in, you can also create new documents in Business Central. So if I think this client's interested in a quote and I want to create a new sales quote, I'll go ahead and say, let's create a new sales quote here. And it'll take a few seconds over on the right-hand side of the screen. It's reading the email, and it's actually using a little bit of OCR and a little bit of artificial intelligence to say, hey, what's happening here? Like, what's this client asking for? Well, it looks like they're asking for these two products, right? Is this what they're asking for? So the system actually read the email, looked at our inventory items and said, yeah, I think we found the ones you want to put on a sales quote. Do you want to go ahead? And what I can do from within here is go through the steps now of creating the sales quote. So I can, it's already found the customer I'm associated with it and put it in, and I can make sure the lines line up correctly, and I can issue the sales quote directly from Outlook. So I think one of the great things about Business Central is this interoperability with Outlook. Another great thing is that Business Central comes integrated with Power BI. You'll see Power BI panels within Business Central, but I do want to point out Business Central also serves up things like dashboards that look like this based on Business Central data. Getting data into Power BI is one of the great benefits of Business Central, because there's a web service library that allows us very easily to expose data sets that can be used in Power BI to build dashboards specific to your business and to ensure then that the right people have the right access to the right information at the right time. Now, let me go ahead and navigate just back to Business Central for a second, and we'll log back in, and we'll just quickly go through another key feature for BC. While that's coming up, one of the things that I like to point out as well is that there's a full-featured mobile app. So what I've done is just opened up the mobile app on my phone, and you can see right away the numbers, everything about it totally matches. As I scroll through the mobile app, you can see we get, hey, charts of business performance. Here's our top customers, for instance. As I continue to scroll through, I can see my favorite accounts and I can see balances. It sounds silly, but this favorite account feature is actually one of my favorite features, because I think as accountants, we all have certain GL accounts in our business that we need to monitor, and favorite accounts is a great way to do that. I could continue to look at things like, for instance, a mini trial balance and look at, hey, here's our profitability for the month. In fact, all of the features that are available in the product through the web browser are available here. This is also a great way to do workflow approvals, but you could register a new customer or vendor. You can reconcile payments. You can actually issue financial statements from your web browser. And amazingly, right from the web browser, I can get a P&L view or a financial statement view that I've created in Business Central. So I think when we think about a modern ERP, we have to think about first a great experience for the user, totally integrated with Outlook, totally integrated with Microsoft Office, full-featured mobile app, and again, working on all browsers. Some of the other things I think that Microsoft has really done well with Business Central is the overall user experience from even a UI and UX perspective. This product is really quite modern. You'll notice things here like the ability to shrink or expand screens. If I go look at a customer record, for instance, when I open up my customer record, and by the way, we talked earlier about, key facts on the customer. You can see what's happening with that customer. You can see attachments in here. If I open the customer record, the same sort of fact pane opens on the right-hand side, and I can see the various attachments that have been made, any notes, any links. I can close that off. But look at how this user interface works. I've got tabs here that can easily open or close so that I can look at what I want to, the specific tab I want to focus on. When I collapse a tab, I get key information that sits over here. I can shrink or expand this screen, okay? I can move to the next customer by clicking here. I can show more in a panel or show less. Here's another great feature. I can personalize this. So let's just say that I'm working as an end user on customers, and I'm like, I don't need a service code zone. Like when I look at a customer record, I don't want to see this field. Well, what I do is I actually come in here and I just click hide. And from now on, that field will not be there. If there were other fields I wanted to add, I would come in and I'd click, hey, add a field. And if the customer, for instance, had a name to field, because we've got, 2 levels of naming for them, I could drag and drop that in here. And now that will show up all the time on that customer card. So pretty amazing experience doing that through a browser. What's even more amazing, if I was to open up this customer record on the mobile app, the changes I just made would be instantly reflected in the mobile app as well. And it's remembering those changes for me, the user. There is an ability to do this on a wholesale basis across all of your users as an administrator through a function called design. And it's something that, again, it's just as easy as what I just did, drag and drop, hide and show. So what a great experience to really personalize an ERP system. We don't have users looking at screens with a whole bunch of fields they're not using. That's not a thing anymore. And because that's not a thing, it really helps with the overall user adoption. You'll see your users actually get onto the system and get it a lot faster. Let's go ahead and look at some core basics in Business Central. Some of the things that are important to know and consider as you look at it. So for starters, we'll start with the chart of accounts. Inside the chart of accounts, the way it's organized in Business Central is you have one dimension that represents your main accounts. So think about like one segment that represents your main accounts. You can have as many characters in there as you want. I think there might be a limit of like 10 or something, but it doesn't matter. Really, you set up accounts. And what's interesting here is you structure them in groups. You say, well, okay, accounts receivable, it starts at 13,000 and ends at 13,400. And that's my beginning total and end total. So the accounts I can use and post to are the posting accounts in between. You'll also see these end totals now group up the values between the starting and end. And we can use the end total accounts in our favorite accounts. We can use them in our Power BI dashboards. We can use them in the financial reporting that comes out of Business Central. The other great thing is that accounts really follow a very traditional setup, right? We have an account number, we give it a name, we say whether it's income statement or balance sheet, we put it in categories and subcategories. We say if it's posting, what type it is. Very simple to set up, very simple to migrate. But the accounts work in conjunction in Business Central, not just on their own. They work with a concept called financial dimensions. And dimensions are really groupings and aggregations of different things that we use to break down the business, right? So people with multi-segment GLs, like folks coming from Dynamics GP, you would think of these dimensions like your other segments. They're not your main segment. Traditional dimensions in Business Central are things like departments, business units, things like projects. People do customer groups. This is especially useful in the nonprofit space where there's, oftentimes specific and unique reporting. They may have donors, they may have focus areas, they may have regions, special ways that they need to report, and you're not limited because you can create as many of these dimensions as you like. Two of them become what are called global dimensions, which we use throughout the application. Everywhere on an inquiry window, you'll see them available as something you can use to inquire on. And one of the things Business Central does really, really well is it says, hey, we're not always going to ask the user for the dimension. We're going to allow this thing called default dimensions. We're going to allow you to say, hey, for a certain customer, a certain vendor, a certain item, a project, when we send transactions through those master records, automatically add dimensions to the GL account that results, or the GL transaction that results. So say we go back to our customer record here. When we look at our customer record for trade research, I can come up to the customer and say, you know what, I want to associate some default dimensions. Every time I use trade research, add the medium customer group and the administration department to any transaction related to trade research. What does that do for us? Well, think about a multidimensional system. Say we're doing some financial reporting and, really a straightforward, financial statement here. We can run one and say, what does that look like, right? And I did this earlier on the mobile app, but just so you can see it on the full screen, here's a financial statement. And of course, for those of you wondering, you can absolutely control the layout of the statements, how they're built. There's a very simple report writer to generate these statements inside Business Central. And I'll show you just quickly a little bit about that in a moment. But the piece I want to talk to you about is, yes, this is an income statement, but look back at this screen. I can actually filter it on a specific department. So if I want to look at that just for the administration department, that global dimension is now a filter, and I click preview, and the results are going to be different because we're looking at the administration department now. Another view of these reports is something inside Business Central called account schedules. And when we look at the account schedules, what we'll see here is that the same report we just looked at, we can look at in a more interactive fashion. So I can come in and say, hey, let me just see an overview of this statement. Well, now what I'm looking at actually is an interactive view of the same report I just ran, but this interactive view is a little nicer because what it lets me do is scroll through and drill down. So I see a materials cost of $350,000. I can click on it and drill down and immediately see where the $350,000 is coming from, and it's an order that we've placed, and it's gone through purchasing and a purchase invoice. And I can actually come here and look at it. If I want to go to the underlying entry, I can click on Find Entries. I can see GL tax entries, vendor ledger entries, or even just go in and look at, hey, we ordered a section of slide for a project that cost us $350,000. So I just drilled back right from the report to the underlying invoice. And I think this is, again, one of the great features, this drill back capability. And you're also seeing a little bit here just how quickly we move through the screens. As a legacy on-premise client install type, experience I had for the last 20 years, I was really weary about a web interface and can it have the speed of my traditional client. What I'm finding in Business Central is it's actually as fast or possibly faster than my old client install on my old accounting software. And that's truly amazing. You can see here from the user experience just how quick it is to drill through things and drill down. Now, anytime I've forgotten where I was or what I want to look at, I can come to these module layouts at the top and click and drill down. One of the other favorites I have is the search capability in Business Central. This is a Google-like search. It's fantastic, actually. So if I was looking for something like, hey, I'm trying to remember how a purchase invoice looks or where to go to get the purchase invoices, I just start typing and I get results. And the way this search tool lays out results is really great. First of all, it shows me things on the current page. It shows me pages and tasks that I might want to look at. It's got reports and analysis, shows me documentation. It even goes down and shows me there may be some apps out there on Microsoft App Stores that relate to your search. So what a world-class search capability. It's absolutely excellent. Now, if there's something I'm looking for in here, I can bookmark this. So like purchase invoices, let's say I go ahead and bookmark it. Just add it as a bookmark, and it says, hey, this was added to the navigation menu of your role center. What does that mean? It means right in here now, if you look at it, it just added purchase invoices to my home screen. So it's always here. And as a guy who does demos a lot, I sometimes use this just to remember what to show in demos. But this is really, really great. So I'll go ahead and click on purchase invoices, and I can see now any of the outstanding purchase invoices that we have in the system. I'll go ahead and click on one, and you can say, hey, here's a purchase invoice. I've said before, one of the great things is this fact pane. So you can see over here attachments. I can see a document attachment. If I click on that, it'll drop down any attachment we had, and it'll save it on my desktop. I can see any notes that we've put in here. And then there's details about the vendor I might want to know, the current balance, outstanding orders, all kinds of information, the last time they paid us. So some really great information. Now, when we enter an invoice, this is the experience it looks like. You have a header. You have lines you put on it. The system calculates taxes. When you go to post it, you have the ability to preview posting to see the results. You can go ahead and post it. Or if you want, and depending on the security you have set up, you could say, hey, I just want to have a batch posting where it goes and grabs a bunch of these invoices and auto posts them. But one of the things often clients have on something like this, before it goes through the posting process, is you have the ability to set up approvals. And when you do workflow approvals in Business Central, it means we have a user who enters an invoice, maybe they've set up a new vendor, maybe it's a sales invoice, maybe it's a sales order, maybe it's a quote. It works the same on all these documents that we can say, send approval request. And when you send an approval request, what happens is your user's going to get an email saying, hey, you need to go ahead and approve. And they would see a number in their request to approve page, and they would come in and actually see a transaction here and look at it and say, hey, I can approve it, reject it, or delegate it. In an example where maybe they've gone through and done some approvals already, you can actually see right from here what's being approved. You can go back to the record. This shows me I actually approved the setup of a new customer called Canadian Tire. So not only do I see the approvals I have to make, but the history of the approvals I have made sit here as well. And so the workflow is a key capability and core capability set inside the product. Now we showed you, purchases and purchase invoice. The same sort of form works in reverse for sales invoices, right? So if I look at a sales invoice, I can set up a sales invoice, and I could have items on here that I'm selling. I could simply say I want to add a GL account. So hey, we have a miscellaneous sale, and I want it to go to a certain GL account. So charge $1,200 and send it through for approval. And sales has all the functions you'd expect, from sales quotes, orders, to invoices, to credit notes and returns. Purchasing has all these items you'd expect, from vendor setup to purchase quotes, purchase orders, blanket orders, purchase invoices, credit returns, and memos. So fully featured across core capability. Another favorite module of mine is the simplicity of Business Central's Jobs module. And the Jobs module in Business Central is really about tracking projects. We use the word jobs, but really we mean projects. And what happens in here is, when we go in, we say, okay, we're going to set up, for instance, a Business Central implementation. What does this look like? Well, for starters, what we do is we set up a company or a customer, and then we come down and set up a series of of job tasks, a series of, really a task schedule. What we're doing, we have a start and end date, and we create tasks. This is a free-form structure. You can have as many or as few as you like in here. And when you come in and actually set up a task, one of the things you'll do below the task is set up a planning line. And the planning line really controls the budget for that specific task. So on this one, you can see I've got John, a subcontractor, and Linda, who are spending a certain amount of hours at different unit costs to fulfill this part of it, which is the requirements review. And so when I look at reviewing requirements, I now have a budgeted cost of $31.50. And if we're using Business Central's built-in timesheets, or if we're charging subcontractor invoices, I can immediately see where the actuals are coming. If we're billing from this line, I can see what we need to bill and how much has been invoiced based on the time that came through. Okay, now another option with respect to jobs is if you're in a much bigger job, you could have phases in it. You may not have revenue associated to each of the cost lines, but instead you have milestone type billing that you're going to do. And the great thing about Business Central in the project module is it keeps track of your budgeted costs and your actual, your billable, and what's been invoiced. And the system then will track down here in the WIP and recognition section. It'll track for you what your work in process or your deferred revenue and revenue recognition should be, as well as the cost side of it. So this jobs module is really quite good. And I think one of the other things that's important just to point out about the jobs module is that in your jobs module, it comes integrated with timesheets. So in fact, when we look at our timesheets, you'll see here that if I'm using the jobs module, I can keep track of my time. I can add comments to, the specific line that I'm putting in. So if I put those 8 hours in, I can come in and add comments here. And of course, we'll keep track of those and expose those on invoices as we need to. So again, really that project module is fully featured. It's quite flexible and another great characteristic inside Business Central. Now, this is just meant to give you an initial introduction into the product. One of the things I'll just point out is that, of course, the system has multi-currency capability. The system has the ability for you to have in here as many companies as you want. So if I come to my settings, for instance, you can see we've got a whole host of legal entities set up in here and a bunch we use for training and development, right? It comes with pre-built roles that we can change and adapt and really suit your business and your user profiles. So, this is really personalized to you and your organization. Okay, one last thing is I wanted to talk just briefly about some of the great functionality in the system. There are extensive use of web services in Business Central. And I mentioned these at the beginning. The web services capability is here not only for integrating data, it's also here for exposing data. So when we look at those web services, you would see across the application all kinds of different queries that we can expose. And you see a bunch here for Power BI, right? Our customer list, our jobs list. All you need to do to get to those data sets in Power BI is take this OData URL and say, hey, I'm getting data from, I'm pulling data from an OData feed. With your URL, your login and password, you'll have the data set. And if there's a data set here you need out of Business Central, but it's not on the list, there's a simple little wizard that allows you to create a new web service to expose data. And it's as simple as saying, hey, I want to create a new data set. You give it a name. You come in and search through Business Central for the various pages you want to see. And hey, you come in and say, okay, I want the general ledger entries page in my data set. And you'll go ahead and build that out. So I probably used that name before. It's asking me to refresh, but it is actually that simple. And at the end of those series of steps, you'll have a new web service created with a new data feed. You can also expose your account schedules or your financial reports through a web service so that they can be consumed in Power BI. So I really wanted to point on this. I don't want to get too technical with it, but this is a really full-featured web service capability within Business Central, and really a great functional set and easy to use, which is the big thing. Like as an end user, as a guy who's not overly technical, more on the functional side, I can pull an OData feed into Excel or Power BI and run pivots or create visuals, that's pretty amazing with just a little bit of training. All right, so let's just talk a little bit more about some of the core elements of Business Central and things like how we get started and what does licensing look like. So talk about pricing and migration for a second. We mentioned this at the beginning. We talked about sort of, hey, there's a compelling reason to look at Business Central. Canadian dollar prices in front of you, they're divided in really 3 tiers. Team member, which really is somebody who has inquiry privileges, they can do workflow approvals, they can enter a timesheet. An essentials user, which we're finding is really the traditional user. This is your full-time accounting user who's entering transactions across the application and doing reports, running reports, creating reports, all that good stuff. So they're at $90 per user per month. And then there is a premium user. If you needed service management or manufacturing, that moves your tenant up to $128 per user per month. With that, you're getting all the updates, all the backups, all the Microsoft Cloud security. The only thing you need is a browser, and you're up and operating your system. So really compelling price point when you consider everything you're getting for it. There is transition capability here, and I just wanted to talk about this for a quick second. There is different migration tools available. There's one for QuickBooks, there's one for Dynamics GP, there's one for Dynamics SL, there's new ones being built all the time. And the way these tools work is they actually allow us to deploy a cloud tenant of Business Central, install an add-on piece of software, in this case in your Dynamics environment, and we run it, and it actually, over the course of a few hours, moves your data from your legacy system into Business Central. And the key advantages to this is that you're really getting some really core data, things like your GL account and summary transactions, customers and open receivables, vendors and open payables, items and quantity on hand at the time we ran the migration, all kinds of supporting data like sales people, posting groups, dimensions, even history that gets brought through. So these migration pieces are extremely valuable, but it's not the only way to get into Business Central. If you don't have an existing system, it's not a problem, because we also go through what we consider traditional sort of configurations where we use data packages and we clean the data up in Excel and then we integrate it in. We have a crackerjack team of professionals that really get this job done. We've been working with Business Central for many years. We use a methodology called SureStep to ensure that your ERP implementation goes according to plan and without risk. This includes consultation, any technical requirements, our technical team will get involved and assist with, ongoing support and account management, and of course the full cycle from initial requirements through testing, training, configuration, planning, all of that to ensure that your ERP goes live with as much success as possible. All right, at this time, I'll just take a few questions that have come in during the presentation. First and foremost, what is user adoption like on Business Central? That's a really good question. And what we've found, and I may have said this earlier in the demonstration, we found that user adoption is actually better than any other ERP product we've worked with. And I think part of the reason why is there's a compelling user experience here. It's simple and easy to navigate. And because of how we personalize it, and we don't show every user every field in the system, it really makes it easier for the users to get through it. A central part of our methodology of implementation is to ensure the users, after they've done training, they go through a user acceptance test process. And that doesn't mean just, hey, here's the training, go try it. We actually give them guidance on following the steps through the process to ensure that they understand how a document is created or posted, right? And so this also helps, I think, ensure that the user adoption is really good. So I think, to answer the question, it's twofold. One is, hey, the product itself is really nice and slick and compelling. And number two is the methodology supports ensuring that the user, when they go into the system, are well trained and have experienced it and tried it, and tested it, and all that good stuff. Okay, another question relate to if I'm on Dynamics GP and I want to migrate, Would I always use this migration tool, or would it be a bit of both migration and maybe some data cleanup? I'm concerned that my GP has dirty data or stuff that needs to be cleaned up. Okay, very good question. Very real question too. We see this one all the time. So when we do our analysis, one of the things we'll do is we'll actually set up in a test environment and run a test migration so you can see your GP data in Business Central, and that will allow you to determine whether you want to solely use the migration tool or whether you want to do some cleanup as well. I'd say from experience, we're doing both, right? We see a lot of people wanting to do really big mass cleanups, and in that case, we go through a more traditional configuration. We see some clients with some good GP setup, and we'll use the migration tool and then do some data cleanup, but ultimately we'll guide you through that process. However, there's no question, the migration tool is efficient and it adds value to any migration. And again, doesn't have to be just GP, could be SL, could be QuickBooks, could be some other ones that are out there. Last one, John, you mentioned CRM integration at the very beginning, but you didn't show anything. Yes, correct. So we could do another webinar just on Business Central and CRM integration. I do want to talk about that. Business Central is integrated out of the box to Microsoft's CRM product, which is now known as Dynamics 365 for sales, customer service, marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those products are, the Dynamics 365 for sales product is integrated out of the box with Business Central. And what it means is that accounts in CRM and customer records in Business Central stay synchronized. It is a two-way sync. You can update it in BC or you can update it in CRM. There is a transaction flow that says you can create an order in CRM and that order will drop as a sales order in Business Central, where you can fulfill the sales order and invoice it. And once you invoice it in Business Central, a copy of the invoice will be integrated back to CRM, as well as a whole host of financial data, KPIs, some of the things you saw on the fact panel, things like outstanding balances, number of orders or invoices this year, information like that. And if we need to, we can extend that integration. We have the capability to wrap it with more integration, and we've done that in the past for some large distributors and others that are heavily reliant on CRM. So if you're looking at, or if you have Microsoft Dynamics CRM, certainly consider Business Central alongside it, because the two integrate really, really well. I want to thank you for all your questions today. I hope this was enough to get started. I'd love to spend a bit more time with you, as would our team, going through a much deeper dive and demo and understanding a little bit about your unique needs. So please feel free to contact us at your convenience, and we'd love to talk with you. Thanks for taking the time today.